over time. As you might have noticed over time, I often like to stick in a rather esoteric topic just 'cause. Keeps us on our toes. And I will get to that this morning as we move forward. I'll start just by saying we need to know. We have a deep need to know where we are, what's going on around us, and how we fit in. Now, this works differently for each of us because the mental maps we create to organize what matters to us vary so much. They also vary within each of us. We carry more than one such map in our head. To explain a bit what I mean here, these maps I speak of might be maps of physical space, where we are, social space, how we relate to others, or any other existential reality of concern. Our lives are most comfortable when our various maps work and stay relatively fixed from day to day. I feel secure when I know where the grocery store is and how I can get there. If it were to move every week, my life would feel a little riskier, and I'd feel a little bit more like a hunter of old, relying on search for my food. Fortunately, my store does stay in one place, and my journey to provision the home front is fixated in my own mental map of the neighborhood in which I live. We work from expectations, and we thrive on predictability. Daily life feels secure and safe when we can picture what will come. And it makes those things that are improbable more joyous because we're secure in our ability to experience them. Some of our mental maps are local, limited to a fairly small and bounded world, something we know well. For some of us here, that world might be Beverly or Chicago, but we also have extended maps that reticulate out and locate us in the broader region and the world. We all know how to get to the airport. We know that we can board planes to travel almost anywhere if we wish, and have unlimited bank accounts. We also have mental maps that relate us to people, those we know and love, those we have contact with. I think of these people maps as concentric circles, and the inner circle includes those we are closest to, and subsequent circles, those we are somewhat less connected to. My family and a few close friends are my smallest circle, those with whom I truly share blood, heart, unquestioning love, and complete commitment. I see other circles of those I know and care about, friends, colleagues, church communities, and the like. This is all defined by me and seen through my eyes. Those close-in circles are intentional, they are constructed, and they are very real, probably the most real things in my life. Some belong only to me, and others, like this church community, I share with all of you. And gradually, as our circles become larger and more distant, they contain people I don't know. Persons who might share other ideas, other languages, and have their own other circles. These circles are drawn around those we hold inside, those we embrace, those we choose to include. The backside of this is the same circles exclude all others. At some point, there might be a circle that works as a boundary between those persons we consider to be worthy, deserving of justice, dignity, and acceptance, and those persons held to be undeserving of our care or consideration. as you use, and hopefully just as good people, will aspire to push the boundary of acceptance to the farthest edges, to include everyone and recognize their inherent worth and dignity. But we must be vigilant always in the face of rhetoric that tries to demonstrate that the outsider is a demon, the immigrant, the religiously and ethnically different. Forces of nationalism, xenophobia, isolationism, racism, and other similar isms work to define the world as us against them, with a rhetoric demonizing and distancing that easily turns us and them into us versus them. So it's important that we hold on to our core values in a time such as today, when the rallying cries of unity and patriotism are too often made in ways that attempt to build a cultural ethos of exceptionalism and exclusion. Always hold to our core. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We hold a goal of world community with peace, liberty, justice for all. And we know that we are part of an interdependent web of all existence, that what happens to anybody in some way happens to us. The fact that all humanity is bound as a people is a fundamental tenet of most religious teachings. Both our Jewish and Christian heritage call us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And through his teaching in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus left no question but that his commandment embraces all of humanity alike. That is the teaching of Christianity. One song that's gained following in many liberal churches is Draw the Circle Wide by Mark Miller. I don't know if it's ever been sung here at Beverly. Greg, do you know? It's a good choir piece, so we'll have to find it. But the lyrics are quite simple. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song, no one stands alone. Standing side by side, draw the circle wide. So, circles. I love this song, because drawing our circles of belonging wider and wider is how we bring everyone alive into our one world as equal and full valued participants in humanity. Yeah, this is somewhat Pollyanna-ish, but it is a good aspiration. But let me return to our mental maps and how we or other people know and interpret what is around us. And I will start in antiquity and with circles in classical Greece, and with one of the more synthetic thinkers the world has ever known, Pythagoras. Pythagoras is especially known for his influence on mathematics and music and the direct relation between the two. He is said to have discovered the ways that vibrations produce sound, that the amount of vibration determines pitch, such as we see with different lengths of the strings on musical instruments, like Greg's guitar or Gene's piano. And the ratio of separate vibrations influence the harmonies of sounds heard together. Usually the word harmony is used for combinations that are aesthetically pleasing. When sounds clash and hurt the ear, we are more likely to call that discord or just noise. Now, in some ways, I should be doing this service with somebody that knows musical theory and can talk about ratios and intervals and what fifths are and all this stuff, and I'm totally ignorant, so you got to bear with me. I'll just gloss over that stuff and presume it's true. By generalizing from his earthly observations that moving objects vibrate and create sound, Pythagoras decided that the celestial bodies, which he observed closely, those moving around the earth, because at his time, everything was earth-centered, that these should produce sound. The sun, the moon, all the planets, all the stars spun around in the sky. He theorized that the tone of the sounds these bodies emit should be determined by their orbital speed, which in turn could be expressed by their interval distance from Earth. His measures determined that the moon, which is the nearest body, was one full tone removed from Earth. Mercury, another half tone. Venus, yet another half tone. And then the sun as 1.5 tones further. And as we move outward, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn each had characteristic tones as well. These were all of the known bodies except for the fixed stars beyond. The sounds created by the celestial bodies as they orbited Earth were assumed to be very loud, to be constant, and to create perfect harmony, which Pythagoras termed the harmony of the spheres. He thought these sounds could affect the quality of life on Earth, and by presumption, they formed a perfect and pleasing harmony. The fact that they were not audible to humans could be held as a problem with this theory. But it was decided that we couldn't hear them because they had always been there, and that we only noticed changes in sounds, that these fixed noises were just part of what we knew to be. In classical times, the idea of the human spirit and ideas of how the world worked were sort of seen as the same thing. Astronomy, mathematics, religion, music, science, literature, they were all understood to converge into the one known branch of knowledge, which was knowledge. The idea of music of the spheres representing a perfection in the design of the universe remained very active in human science and was readily integrated with newer religious ideas, such as the divine creations of Christianity as they took hold in the Western world. This worked its way right in to the cosmology of the early Christian observers. I find it very interesting that this idea was so powerful in the imagination of Western culture that it even initially withstood the scientific leap from an Earth-centered universe to a heliocentric solar system, where we realized that everything didn't go around us, that we and everything else went around the sun. We give Copernicus most of the credit for recognizing the heliocentric nature, but Johann Kepler did most of the mathematical work on planetary motion in the solar system. And he made his most profound mathematical discoveries while trying to quantify the musical intervals and harmonies of the 6 known planets. Unlike Pythagoras, Kepler's thinking centered on a Christian creator God who had designed the planets with pleasant musical, geometric, and mathematical properties. Creation was perfection because it was divine. And it was Kepler, and this is almost 2,000 years after Pythagoras. Kepler was somewhere around, 1500. Pythagoras was 500 BC, who quantified that planets followed regular orbits that were elliptical instead of circular. And he showed how the shape and size of these ellipses determine the period of each orbit. He also predicted that the orbital speed of each planet would vary by whether they were near the perihelion or aphelion of their path, and that the tone each generated at any time would depend on their speed. So they hadn't given up these ideas of tone. They still didn't hear them, but they hadn't given them up. The orbit of Venus is nearly circular, so it produces the same tone throughout its rotation. Mercury has the most variation in pitch and also cycles through its changes most rapidly due to its short orbit. Kepler claimed the planets were in perfect harmony, with one soprano, Mercury, two altos, Earth and Venus, one tenor, Mars, and two basses, Jupiter and Saturn. If you notice, the sun and the moon don't make noise anymore because we did throw them out when we realized that things were different. Like Pythagoras and all in between, Kepler acknowledged that this harmony of the worlds was inaudible, but he claimed that it was audible to the intellect and to the soul, and gave a very agreeable feeling of bliss, a true gift from God. I love this image, God, who is the ineffable and unknowable, gifting us with sounds that we are unable to hear. There's got to be truth in there somewhere. Listen to the transcript of sounds that Kepler assumed to be made by the planets as they move through their orbits. And here I have to give you a brief apology. I was going to load Pam up with a video, and in the confusion before church, neglected to get that done. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. This has been done in many ways with musical instruments and all kinds of things, you know, bassoons and basses and high things and all that. And what is going on here? That woman is not who I want to see. I'll be right with you. Uh-oh. What? There we go. I'll be right with you. And yeah, I will use that mic, Greg. There's too many places where I can turn off the volume. Here. No, I've got it. Pam's not playing it, I am. This is Saturn. First, very deep, very slow. Can you hear this at all? And if you notice, Jupiter just kicked in as well. They're both going. They're both basses. Saturn changes very slowly, Jupiter more rapidly. And now Mars is starting. Mars cycles through much more quickly with some variation. Earth kicks in, very little change, much faster than Mars. And now Venus, no change, just another tone. And pretty soon, yeah, we get that fidgety soprano. I don't know if you can hear it. Very fast change. And on this version, we lost very little by not being able to see. I actually had a wonderful one that I took away from the internet. They're meant. Oh. Now, this imagery carries into modern culture. Paul Hindemith wrote a Music of the Spheres opera, and many others have made compositions around this theme. One of the more recent is the song Om by the Moody Blues. Today, the idea seems sort of ludicrous, but the music of the planets was an axiomatic piece of how humans once mapped the relation to creation. To our ancestors, the planets in the night sky carried messages from the Creator and linked directly to our highest knowledge in mathematics, music, and astronomy. This theory rendered the cosmos understandable and gave people what they thought was a key to meaning in the universe. Now, science and rationality have split from religion, and we have developed new ways of understanding our solar system and the celestial bodies that lie beyond. Because we are so desirous of finding harmony and order around us, do we consider it a loss that this long time assumed harmony of the spheres does not and cannot exist? I don't know. While no divine harmony is being sung by the planets, we do now understand how the planets were created, sort of, how they established a regular equilibrium within our solar system, and how their orbital patterns result from a long process of establishing balance. Out of chaos, the planetary system emerged as an ordered and predictable fixity, where each orb established a stable path. We now know of additional planets and a whole bunch of moons, each also following regular, predictable orbits. So while we cannot listen to planetary harmonies that would please our souls, we can take great comfort in the fact that we have a cosmology that tells us where the planets come from and why they seem to spin eternally around our sun. We hold the knowledge that all of these parts of the solar system are conforming to the rules of science as we now understand them, and that there is great harmony in the regularity and balance of the system. We cannot hear anything, but we can admire it and take a great comfort in how well our new mental maps still work. Every aspect of our world and universe are truly awe-inspiring and proper objects for reverence, whether we're looking out into the expanse of the cosmos or down into the subatomic realm. I often return to the lines of William Blake some 250 years ago and marvel at his prescience when he said, "To see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour." There was a time when all knowledge was unified and any of you could go out and learn almost everything that people knew anywhere. We have a few people now that at least excel in a few areas, and we call them Renaissance people, because that's sort of what kicked in at the time of the Renaissance when everything else went away. That was the last time you could really know the world and be literate in all things. Our new map explains that the stability of the planetary orbits emerged from a series of random acts. And order was built out of chaos as consistent forces acted on matter while following clear and unchanging physical law. Our newer picture of the birth of the solar system may not have the simplicity of the story of a divine hand creating eternal perfection, but it has the same result. Our known universe is a wonder and is as close to perfection as we can know. Now we just have to teach ourselves how to live in it so that we survive and thrive along with the rest of creation. So be it, blessed be. We now, please join us in singing Rise, if you would like, hymn